My favorite motorcycle manufacturer has always been Honda. I have been called a Honda fanboy many times in the past, and that's because I've owned a lot of them. I've always admired how Honda made the most reliable and well-built motorcycles. Not only that, but Honda constantly pushed the limits with top-tier performance and innovative designs, with complex and cool engines such as the RC45 and the NR750. However, Honda is no longer the same innovative top-of-the-line manufacturer that they once were in the 2000s. Over the past 7 or 8 years, that title would have to go to a different brand, Kawasaki. With Kawasaki releasing the ZX4RR, they have officially made me come to the acceptance that they and their bikes are the gold standard in the motorcycling world. And this isn't recency bias either. If anything, I am late to the party. I've been trying to deny Kawasaki the crown for years, but they've honestly deserved it. Kawasaki is continuing to prove themselves time and time again, and they are not afraid to compete. They are not afraid to innovate. Kawasaki has some of the fastest, most reliable, and well-built Japanese motorcycles on the market today. Let's go back a decade to the Ninja 300. In 2013, Kawasaki made the Ninja 300. I actually used to own one, and its only competition was the CBR600R. But the Ninja 300 was clearly the superior motorcycle. With more power, similar gas mileage, and great reliability, Kawasaki was comfortably on top. But then in 2015, Yamaha came out with their R3, which was a 320cc parallel twin motorcycle making 42 horsepower. This was actually a pretty big blow to Kawasaki, as their smaller Ninja 300 was just a 296cc parallel twin making 39 horsepower. Now that difference of 3 horsepower wasn't a big issue for most of us, but I believe Kawasaki saw this as a challenge from Yamaha. Yamaha hit Kawasaki with a small displacement bump in order to one-up them in the power department. I don't know, I think I've seen this somewhere else before. Anyway, Kawasaki has had a stronghold on the small displacement beginner class for nearly 20 years at this point, so they did not take this lightly. Kawasaki responded to Yamaha's 320cc R3 3 years later in 2018 with their own 399cc Ninja 400, which made 49 horsepower, thus putting Kawasaki back on top of the small bike market, and the Ninja 400 is a massive success as a result. And there are plenty of other examples of that. Obviously, Kawasaki has the displacement advantage in their 600 class as well, but also their ZX6R won my buyer's guide video I made a few years back, mostly because yes, it is the most powerful, but also it has the best valued motorcycle in the class and simply outclassed the entire competition as a result, which allowed it to win very easily. And sticking to the middleweight sport bikes, Kawasaki has consistently been the only manufacturer to even respond to any competition, especially in the 600 class. Suzuki hasn't updated their 600 since 2011, and Honda, sure, they updated theirs recently, but it ended up being even heavier and slower than the last model, and it's not even available in the US market. And then you have Yamaha that just completely quit on their R6 altogether and is no longer even making it. Instead, they replaced it with the R7, which is a parallel twin. So here we have Yamaha making their mid-size bikes with less cylinders and Kawasaki making their small bikes with more cylinders. It's a completely different approach, and I'm not saying that the R7 is a bad bike. I think that's an awesome bike, but I hate that Yamaha got rid of their R6 for it. I just wish they decided to keep both, similarly to how Kawasaki kept the Ninja 400 when they introduced the ZX4R. And you cannot forget about their ZX14R, which is still the King Kong of hypersports. Even though I'm a huge fan of the new Hayabusa, it still can't really even hold a candle to the Kawasaki ZX14R. Even though Suzuki recently updated their Busa, it still makes less power and is even more expensive than the ZX14R. So once again, Kawasaki is on top of this market as well. And not only that, but Kawasaki really flexed their muscles back in 2015 when they released their H2 and H2R. Kawasaki is still the only manufacturer making supercharged motorcycles on the market today, well, other than B-Moto, but they actually use the H2 engine in their bike. So Kawasaki even expanded their supercharger to the sport touring market by releasing the H2SX, which is also based on the H2, but more comfortable and street friendly, but still features that sweet chirpy supercharger. So Kawasaki is making a supercharger and putting into multiple different bikes. And yet not a single other manufacturer has decided to one-up them or even try to compete with that. They just left it alone. Without Kawasaki, we don't have supercharged motorcycles today. Kawasaki ZX10R also competes very well with the other Japanese leader bikes. However, I do want to point out that there are two motorcycles that Honda still has that kind of edges out the Kawasaki. First is the Fireblade RRR compared to their ZX10RR. Even though both bikes make very similar horsepower, I just believe that the Triple R is slightly better, but we're splitting hairs with the performance, and you have to give credit to Kawasaki for at least trying to compete with Honda here, unlike Suzuki and Yamaha. Similarly to the Triple R, Kawasaki even tried to compete with the Honda Grom. Kawasaki saw that Honda had a monopoly over the street legal mini bike market, and they quickly threw in their horse, the Z125. Which again, I'll admit the Grom is still the bike to get in this segment. I assume just the fact that Kawasaki is competing with something like this says a lot about them, since once more, Suzuki and Yamaha have actually been completely silent. If you want a small displacement street legal mini bike, then you either have to go with the Grom or the Z125. Kawasaki has my complete respect because they just compete with everyone. They don't lay back and try to make bike sales with their reputation like Honda or Suzuki, and they certainly don't give up like Yamaha did with the R6. As stated earlier, Honda is making the same old bikes but even slower. The new CBR600RR is slower than the 2008 version, and not even available in the United States. We need to come to the realization that every other manufacturer is trending in the wrong direction, a direction for maximizing profit margins by looking at cheaper and cheaper ways to make motorcycles and hoping the marketing teams and reputation can pick up the slack. That's why I made a video explaining the justification for Kawasaki's ZX4R's price tag. Because what Kawasaki did was something no one else would do. They released a new bike not to replace the Ninja 400, but to be sold alongside it. They gave us another option, an option for enthusiasts that wanted a screaming little 400. Just like when Kawasaki made their ZX6R the cheapest 600 on the market a few years ago, even though it objectively was the best middleweight sport bike even in a vacuum, or when they released the only supercharged motorcycle on the market today. Kawasaki is about pushing the limits, burying the competition, and constantly updating their resume. I haven't seen any other manufacturer attack the market like Kawasaki has recently, especially of the Japanese manufacturers. Kawasaki has taken the throne from Honda, and they did that probably about 8 years ago when they released the H2, if I'm being completely honest. But I'm finally going to officially award them the crown in my books, because once they released the small displacement screamers, that just locked them in for me. So with all that said, I just want to say that out of all of the manufacturers of all time, historically Honda is still my favorite because what they did in the 90s and 2000s was overall more impressive. But Kawasaki is not far behind at all, and I am very comfortable in saying Kawasaki is currently making the best Japanese motorcycles today. Anyway, I've made my case. I'm going to end the video here, but I would like to discuss with all of you what are your opinions on who makes the best motorcycles. As you can see, I kept this video to mostly just the Japanese 4 manufacturers, but I could honestly make the argument that Kawasaki versus any other manufacturer in the world, and they'd still be probably number 1 overall. Anyway, I'd love to hear what everybody's thoughts and opinions on this matter is. If Honda or Yamaha makes a better bike that competes with the Kawasaki, please let me know down below which models they are. I know I couldn't cover everything, and I'm not going to pretend that Kawasaki is literally the best motorcycles in every segment, but I do believe they have the most. So with that said, we can continue the conversation in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching. Please subscribe for more motorcycle related content. Take care and bye bye.
Sick news, pull your little arrows out. Let me live my life, the one I'd better lead. All the plans of fantasies, and we looked at them 11 ways. You said, look at me, I looked away, and you wrote the song I wanna play. Alright.